Good morning, friend. You are most welcome to Think Eyes channel. Today we are discussing Mani 001 Anthropology and Method of Research Data Collection Techniques. In Unit 1, we will discuss about primary data and what is data collection techniques. Introduction. Anthropology, unlike other disciplines, always endeavors to look at the human phenomena historically and as such, its research method and techniques reflect this spirit and strive to grasp the totality of human phenomena, covering a wide range of dimensions that is rarely seen in other disciplines. Anthropological research involves both quantitative and qualitative mix of methods to gain a comprehensive and in-depth view of human phenomena from a close angle in both simple and complex societies. This block provides the basic of a wide spectrum of research techniques that are employed in all major branches of anthropological science, right from meanings, definitions, to the actual sets involved in the operationalization of these techniques. Anthropological approach enables one to examine people's experiences in detail by employing primary data collection techniques such as observation, interview, schedule, surveys, case studies, and secondary data collection techniques such as surveys, census, films, documents, gazetters, etc. Gazetters. In sociocultural anthropology, which have been covered in Unit 1 and Unit 2, primary data and secondary data respectively, several biological techniques to understand not only morphological features but also deeper genetic and molecular level characteristics to know biological origin, variation and adaptation in physical or biological anthropology covered in Unit 3, biological methods, and various archaeological techniques to understand the life ways of people who lived in the past in archaeological anthropology covered in Unit 4, archaeological methods, the systematic and stepwise description and discussion of the techniques will enable the reader to learn and internalize and subsequently put them to use in actual field situation. Now we are going to start unit 1 primary data. What are the contents? Introduction first, observation, direct and indirect, participant and non-participant. Interview, structured and unstructured, key informants, interview guide. Schedule, questionnaire, rapid appraisal techniques, focus group discussion, case study, summary. Learning objective. After going through this unit, you will be able to know about the different primary methods used in anthropological research, learn how to use them according to the need of the study undertaken, and understand their relevance in anthropological study. Introduction part. Anthropology is a field science and field is the soul of the subject. In field work, an anthropologist goes to the field and stays with the people whom he wants to study. He observes the phenomena under study and records them systematically. It is true that all phenomena are not visible. In these circumstances, an anthropologist takes help of other techniques of data collection such as interview, case study, schedule, questionnaire, etc. All techniques of data collection have some advantages and disadvantages. Therefore, an anthropologist takes help of more than one technique when he or she goes to collect data from the field. Establishment of report, learning native language, maintaining field notebook, and use of key informants are also important components of the field work. In this chapter, we will discuss about the nature, definition, types, and processes of different kinds of primary ways through which data can be gathered while conducting fieldwork and examining their significance in anthropological research. 1.2 Observation, direct and indirect, participant and non-participant. Observation is one of the earliest methods of data collection. It is largely employed by social anthropologists, with sociologists and other social scientists opting in larger number of for survey and other techniques. Nevertheless, over a period of time, observation has gradually gained importance outside anthropology and empirically in the social sciences. Today, observation is considered to be one of the fundamental critical techniques of social research. Literally, observation means a method of data collection that employs vision as its main means of data collection. It is used as the only technique of data collection or jointly with other techniques like in intensive interviewing and case studies. Observation is one of the major component of participatory research appraisal which we call PRA. Observation is one of the major component of the participatory research appraisal PRA. Observation is an indirect method of data collection since in most cases data is collected without the full knowledge of the respondents. Observation is open to all observable social phenomena. However, there are some limitations. In the first place, there are issues that do not lend themselves to an observational analysis. For example, personal sensitive issues or causes and consequences of social phenomena. Also, past or future events cannot be observed. Further, observation is limited by the fact that it is possible with observable phenomena. There are several types of observation, some more popular than others, although basically similar. They do differ from each other in the degree of observers' participation in the environment or the setting in which it occurs and in the manner in which it is organized. Participant observation is a technique. Participant observation as a technique of anthropological research is associated with Bronislaw Malinowski 1922, which has been incorporated into modern social cultural anthropological fieldwork as a fundamental element. He not only spent a longer period among the Trobriand or we can say Trobriand islanders of Melanesia from 1914 to 1918, but he was also the first anthropologist to conduct fieldwork through native languages. Being a participant observer and having knowledge in native language, he was successfully in collecting vast information in social, religious, economic, and political life of the Trobriand Islanders. Next heading is Naive and Scientific Observation. Naive, Naive, Naive. Naive observation refers to everyday, unstructured observation which people use when they interact with others in social phenomena. Observation becomes scientific when it is systematically planned and executed, when it is related to a certain goal, and when it is subjected to test and controls. Participant and non participant observation. In general, the degree of observers' involvement in observation varies from non participation at all to full participation. In the first case, observers study the people from outside the group without becoming a part of the environment of the observed. In the second case, they actually become members of the group they are supposed to study. The first type of observation is known as non participant observation, the other is participant observation. Malinowski's classic fieldwork in the Trobriand Island is of immense significance in the establishment of anthropological fieldwork methods and particularly of the methodology of participant observation. In participant observation, the observer observes from inside the group. For instance, Warrior Alvin. Who is Warrior Alvin? Warrior Alvin, anthropologist or participant observer. Participant observer or anthropologist Warrior Alvin used participant observation in studying the life of the tribal youth. Among the Muria of Bastar 1947, S.C. Roy, who is regarded as the father of the Indian ethnography, conducted framework in tribal village of Chota Nagpur and Odisha and published ethnographic accounts of Munda 1912, Oraon, Oraon, Oraon 1915, Birhor 1925, Kharia 1937 and Bhuiyas 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 1935. There are several such studies in anthropological literature on tribal, rural, and urban studies in India and abroad. By becoming a member of these groups, one can study, among other things, their structure, process, problems, and attitudes from the inside and as experienced by the members of the groups. So, one common name which is important, Warrior Alvin and S.C. Roy. Warrior Alvin studies Muria of Bastar 1947. S.C. Roy, who is called the father of Indian ethnography. He studied Chota Nagpur and Odisha and ethnic tribe related to these places that are Munda, Orion, Birhor, Kharia, and Bhuiyas. A method is thought to be qualitative if it shows, among other things, at least the following characteristics: a commitment to studying everyday life events which are studied the way they are experienced and understood by the participants, a perception of reality as constructed through interaction and communication of the participants, performance of the study in the natural environment of the participant without the changing it in any way, performance of the study in the natural environment of the participant without changing it in any way, and perception of reality in an interpretative manner. Hence, participant observation is set to study social events under all these conditions, bringing data close to reality, the people living in it, and the way they construct and experience it. More particularly, participant observation observes communication and interaction in an unstructured and natural manner, where the design is developed and modified while observation is carried out in a face to face relationship and in an open and flexible way. Here, observation is directed towards a social situation which only later and after the study has been initiated is broken down into single elements. In the case of non participant observation, the observer are not a part of the environment they study. Their position is clearly defined and different from that of the people. In ideal terms, the observers are invisible, unnoticed, and outside the group they observe. Between participant and non participant observation, there can be another form of observation. This is called quasi participant observation. Quasi participant observation is one where an observer tries to get involved in local daily life, everything from important ceremonies and rituals to ordinary things like meal preparation and consumption, and also carefully observes everything he or she can about it. Though this, the ethnographer or researcher seeks to gain what is called an emic perspective or the native's point of view without imposing their conceptual framework. This emic worldview, which may be quite different from the Attic or outsider's perspective on local life, is a unique and critical part of anthropology. Open and hidden observation. This, this distinction refers to the degree to which the identity of the researchers as an observer, as well as the purpose of the study, is known to the participants. While in the case of open observation, the participants are well informed of nature of the study and the identity of researchers, but in hidden observation they are not. Direct and indirect observation. Direct observation studies the subject it intends to explain. From example, if the study intends to explain the patterns of conflict in martial diets, DYADS, martial diets, and observation involves married couples, this is a direct observation. Indirect observation does not involve the observer directly, either because of informant refuses to take part in the study or a direct observation is not possible. Example, the subject is deceased. Instead, researchers observe the physical traces of the phenomena under study which have been left behind and make conclusions about the subject. The researchers has to carry a field diary, DAIRY, field diary, and write the observations while collecting data by using observation as a research tool. The application of different types of observation depends on the nature of the event to be observed, the acceptance of people participating in that event, and the skills of the observer. The structure and process of observation depends on many factors, especially with regard to the underlying methodology. While in some cases observation is employed as participant observation, in other cases it might appear as non-participant observation. In case study research, for instance, both direct observation and participant observation can be employed. However, in both cases, its process is quite clearly explained and outlined in the protocol. In some cases, where the detailed step by step program of the event to be observed is known in advance, example, marriage ritual. Observation is employed in a structured way where everything must be followed to the last detail as prescribed. In other cases, like dispute resolution, it is done only while employing other methods, for example, while interviewing respondents. The skills of the observer is often more significant in the context of observation than that of assistants working in the context of other forms of data collection. This is because observation, particularly participant observation, relies very much on the attributes of the researchers for both amount and quality of information. Skills are more in demand here than in experiments or survey, particularly with regard to observation employed in the context of case studies. This is more crucial since the observer is often expected often expected to carry out the study single-handed. The qualities of an observer will vary from case to case, particularly with reference to the type of observation chosen. But intelligence and previous experience with observations, exact knowledge of the topic and where appropriate, of the categories, flexible and adaptability, ability to get along with others, to follow instruction to the smallest detail, to be unbiased and free from ideological constraints, and to be honest and trustworthy are the paramount importance. Pilot studies will certainly show the way. Nevertheless, concentration on the following points is a must for researchers. Through understanding of the research topic, knowledge of the peculiarities of the population, understanding of possible problem areas of study, familiarity with the categories where appropriate and their effective use, introduction to ways of overcoming unexpected problems and conflicts, ability to follow instructions accurately and adjust them without causing bias or distortion of the data, adaptability and flexibility, ability to observe several subjects and categories at the same time. The nature of observation makes ethics a real issue since observers have the opportunity to interfere directly with the personal life of the subjects, and since in many cases observation takes place without the subject being aware of it. This becomes even more serious when the subject do not know the identity of the observer. However, in some cases, ethics is not an important issue and should not hinder researchers from pursuing their research interest if they think that the investigation is carried out for a good purpose. We will find that observation as a method of data collection is generally considered to have the following advantages over other methods. It provides information when other methods are not effective. It employs a relative less complicated and less time consuming procedures of subject selection. It can offer data when respondents are unable and or unwilling to cooperate or to offer information. It can offer data when respondents are unable or unwilling to cooperate or to offer information. It approaches reality to its natural structure and studies events as they evolve. As they evolve, it offers first-hand information without relying on the reports of others. It allows the data collection of wide range of the information even when the information is thought to be at any time of study irrelevant. It allows the collection of wide range of information even when the information is thought to be at the time of study irrelevant. This is particularly true of participant observation. It is relatively inexpensive. However, observation also has some limitations, of which the one listed below are the most significant. It cannot be employed when large groups or extensive events are studied. It cannot provide information about past, future, and or unpredictable events. It is inadequate when studying certain phenomena such as sexual behavior, family violence, etc. It is exposed to the observer's bias, selective perception, and selective memory. It offers no control measures regarding bias, attitudes, and opinions of the observer. Despite these limitations, observation, one of the most popular methods of the data collection, employed by researchers of the both the qualitative and quantitative domain. Now we are discussing activity. First is choose an event, occasion, ritual, everyday affair to observe. Write what you observed in detail and tell us what kind of observation method did you see and why. Second is there any form of observation between participant and non-participant observation? If yes, name it and tell us when it is used. 1.3 Interview Structured and Unstructured Key Informants Interview Guide. Interviewing is a form of questioning characterized by the fact that it employs verbal questioning as its principal technique of data collection. Interviews are a common occurrence in everyday life, but as a tool of social research, or better, as a method of data collection, interviewing is different. This is so with regard to its preparation, construction, and execution. First, because it is prepared and executed in a systematic way. Second, because it is controlled by the researchers to avoid bias and distortion, and third, due to the fact that it is related to a specific research question and a specific purpose. Interviews are employed as methods of data collection in most research designs, regardless of the underlying methodology. Qualitative studies employ unstructured forms of interviewing, such as intensive interviewing and focused interviewing, while quantitative studies employ predominantly structured interviews. Semi structured interviews are employed in both quantitative and qualitative studies. There are many types of interviews, each of which differs from the others in structure, purpose, role of interviewer, number of the respondents involved in the each interview, and form and frequency of administration. Structured interview. They are based on a strict procedure and a highly structured interview guide, in which case it is no different from a questionnaire. The instrument allows no freedom to make adjustment to any of its elements, such as content, wording, content wording. Wording means how many words, what type of word, and order of the questions. Such interview is based on a schedule and strict adherence to the questions, and the instructions is paramount. The interviewer is expected to act in a neutral manner, keeping the same tone of voice, offering the same impression to the respondents, using the same style, appearance, probes, prompts and probes, etc., and showing no initiative, spontaneity, or personal interest in the research topic. The purpose of this is to reduce interviewer bias to a minimum and achieve the highest degree of uniformity in procedure. Unstructured interview. They have no strict procedure to follow as described above. There are no restrictions in the wording of the questions, the order of the question, or the interview schedule. The interviewer acts freely in this context on the basis of certain research point, formulating questions as and when required and employing neutral probing. The structure of these interviews is flexible and the restrictions minimal, being presented in most cases in the form of guides rather than rules. Semi structured interviews. They lay somewhere between structured and unstructured interviews. They contain element of both, and while some are closer to structured interviews, others are closer to unstructured interview. The degree to which interviews are structured depends on the research topic and purpose, resources, methodological standards and preferences, and the type of information sought, which can be either quantitative and qualitative techniques. The researchers, that is, the interviewers, hold a central place in the research process. They have to follow the following tasks: selecting or approaching the respondents, arranging the time, date, duration, and condition of interview, performing the interview by following the instruction, controlling the interview situation towards reducing or eliminating resistance, suspicion, prejudice, and negative forces, avoiding bias and working towards an objective, recording the answers accurately, establishing and monitoring positive relations. Due to significance of the interviewer in the research, investigators employ a very systematic process when selecting the interviewer. The criteria usually considered as significant are honesty, trustworthiness, and self control, intelligence, maturity, and friendliness, sociability and social acceptability, carefulness, consciousness, and ability to concrete or concentrate, carefulness, consciousness, and ability to concentrate, accuracy and dependability, objectivity and lack of prejudice, adaptability, independence, and initiative, verbal ability, and ability to listen to others carefully. interest in and familiarity with the research topic, ability to work with others in a team of experts. After selection, interviewers usually undergo training which depend on interviewers' skill, experience and nature of the topic. The training generally includes the following features: developing and practicing interviewing skills, mainly through observation, practice, and criticism. Learning how to present oneself to the respondents, appropriate manners about the lifestyle of the subjects, and about presentation and appearance. Learning essential techniques of persecution or persuasions. Sorry. Learning essential techniques of persuasion necessary to convince uncooperative respondents for participation. I am going to repeat it. Learning essential techniques of persuasions necessary to convince uncooperative respondents for participation. Acquiring knowledge and skills related to obtaining relevant information and recording it accurately. Acquiring knowledge and skills related to obtaining relevant information and recording it accurately. Establishing standards of value neutrally, ethics, anonymity, and confidentiality. Confidentiality. Establishing standards of value, neutrality, ethics, anonymity, and confidentiality. The following common steps can be identified in all forms of interviewing. Seeking the respondents. When meeting the prospective respondents, the interviewer must introduce himself or herself, explain the intention of the visit and purpose of the research, disclose the sponsor, ensure anonymity and confidentiality, explain details of research and arrange a place, date and time for interview. Asking and recording the question. The interview guidelines should be observed accurately. Asking questions depends of course on the type of interviewing. Recording should take place as given in the instruction. Some respondents may interpret taking notes as a branch of promise or get confused. In other cases, taking notes is perceived positively, since some people think that the interviewer who records notes takes their views very seriously. Some ways to overcome such difficulties include writing down keywords only and completing the notes at the end of the interview. The most successful way is the use of tape recorders with the permission of the subjects. Field supervision and checks. Data collection is the most significant part of the research, and its administration should not be left entirely up to the interviewer. Supervision and checks are important in helping to avoid incomplete answers and interviews, refusals to answer certain questions, or even to take part in the interview, too much or too little probing, and inadequate recording of the data. Checks for bias, honesty, politeness, objectivity, ethics, and interviewer respondent relationship should also be made. Completion of the interview. The friendly relationship between the interviewer and the respondent should end with some care, smoothly, and a friendly atmosphere after the question have been answered and have completion checks have been made. And after completion checks have been made. Interviewing is the most commonly used instrument for data collection in social research. We can note the advantage below. Flexibility adjusted to meet many diverse situations. High response rate. Attract a relatively high response rate. Easy administration. No need to read and handle complex documents. Opportunity to observe non-verbal behavior. Less patience and motivation to complete are needed than are required. Control over the environment, control the condition under which the questions are answered. Capacity for correcting misunderstandings by respondents. Control over the order of the questions. Opportunity to record spontaneous answers. Control over the identity of the respondent. completeness of the interview guaranteed, control over the time, date, and place of interview. More complex questions can be used to elicit information. Greater permissible length is more possible in interviewing than other methods. Despite its advantage, we can see we see that interviewing is limited by a number of factors. They may be interviewers or interviews are costlier and time consuming than other methods. Interviews are affected by the factors interviewer and the possible bias associated with it. Interviewing is more convenient than other methods. It offers less anonymity than other methods. It is less effective than other methods when sensitive issues are discussed. Apart from these limitations, interviewing is affected by factors common to other techniques of data collection, for example, deliberate misrepresentation of facts, genuine mistakes, unwillingness, or inability to other information, and similar problems. In such cases, however, it is easier to detect problems when interviewing than when using other methods. They are capable of providing past and present information in detailed form. They have good memory and gives information even analytically. The method of sampling does not arise in selection of key informants. They can be selected purposely or purposively based on the nature of data to be collected. Interview guide, interview should and interview guide are almost similar and they act as the guide points or in interview. It guides the research. It guides the researcher in conducting interview and avoids deviations from the data to be collected. Schedule. Schedules and questionnaire are beneficial as supplementary devices in observation, in interviews, and in evaluating personal behavior and social situation. They also aid in standardizing and objectifying observations and interviews. And finally, they are useful device for isolating one element at a time and thus intensifying observation of it. There is a vast variety of schedules and they can be classified in various ways. Observation, schedule, and guide. The observation schedule offers the opportunity for uniform classification in recording and activities and social situations of persons and or groups being observed. One observer or several may be employed to secure uniformity, systematic data in observation study. One observer or several may be employed to secure uniformly systematic data in an observation study. An observation schedule usually serves several purposes simultaneously. It is a specific tickler. Memory tickler. It is an objective recording of data. It is a standardized device. It is a standardizing device. It aids to delimit the scope of the study. It aims to concrete on the circumscribed elements essential to be analyzed. It aims to concentrate on the circumscribed elements essential to the analysis. Document schedules. These are used for recording data obtained from documents, case histories, and other materials. The document schedule should not be considered a tally sheet. A separate schedule should be used to list the pertinent points from each case record. Institutional survey or evolution schedules. These are used to visualize the problems faced by or inherent in a given type of institution. The length of such schedules depends upon the aspect of the given situation under investigation. Interview schedule. These are used in collection of data through interviews. They help the investigator in maintaining objectivity in collection of data and avoid deviation during interview. They are used in most of the social science research studies as the investigator gets the benefit of observation, interview, and module and schedule. Structure and preparation. The structure and preparation of schedule and questionnaire are almost same. Both contain closed and open-ended questions. However, the schedule contains questions and blank tables unlike the questionnaire that mostly contains questions only. Both the tools need pre-testing for standardization. 1.5 Questionnaire. Surveys are also a known method of data collection in anthropology. The information is gathered through oral or written questioning. Oral questioning is known as interviewing. Written questioning is accomplished through questionnaires. The central element of the questionnaires consist of their nature, structure, content, design, and construction, their strengths and weaknesses, and the forms in which they are employed. The main characteristics of this method is that data are offered by respondents with limited interference on the part of research personnel. The issues such as questionnaire format, type of questions, content of question, and the response format are as relevant to interviewing as they are to questionnaires. The advantage which most researchers and writers considered as significant are listed below. Questionnaires are less expensive than other methods. They produce quick results. Questionnaires can be completed at the respondent's convenience. They offer greater assurance of anonymity. They offer less opportunity for bias or errors caused by the presence or attitudes of the interviewer. Questionnaires are a stable, consistent, and uniform measure without variation. They offer a considered and objective view on the issue since respondents can consult their files and since many subjects prefer to write rather than talk about certain issues. The issue of questionnaires promises a wider coverage since researchers can approach respondents more easily than other methods. They are not affected by problems of no contacts. They are not affected by problems of no contacts. The limitations that we find here. They do not allow probing, prompting, and clarification of the questions. They do not offer opportunities for motivating the respondents to participate in the survey or to answer the questions. The identity of the respondents and the conditions under which the questionnaire are answered are not known. Researchers are not sure whether the right person has answered the questions. It is not possible to check whether the questions order was followed. Questionnaires do not provide an opportunity to collect additional information while they are being completed. Due to lack of supervision, partial response is quite possible, regardless of whether the questionnaire is administered personally or by mail. It has to be constructed according to certain standards and principles. In fact, first place, it has to conclude three main elements, each having a certain purpose: the cover letter, the instructions, and the main body. The main aims of the cover letter are to introduce the respondents to the research topic and research team, to neutralize any doubt or mistrust respondents might have about the study, to motivate them to participate in the study and answer the questions, and to assure them of anonymity and confidentiality. The following are the minimum number of the points to be included in the cover letter. The cover letter has been recognized as one of the factors that influence the response rate. The main objective and social significance of the study, the reasons why the respondents should answer the questionnaire, assurance of the anonymity and confidentiality, requirements for completion such as maximum time, conditions, etc., issues related to ethics, instructions regarding how to state their answer or preference will be given on the questionnaire or on the separate sheet. The instruction usually remind the respondents that they should not try to please the researchers, that there are no right or wrong answers, and that all questions should be attempted, and instructs them about what to do with the completed questionnaire. For example, that it should be returned to the project director in the self-addressed and stamped envelope by a certain date. Inadequate instructions are one of the major sources of non-responses and should be avoided. The main body of the questionnaire includes the questions that are to be answered. In order to be effective, it must be worked out carefully with regard to content, structure, wording, flow, format, and so on. Questionnaire construction is a very demanding task which requires not only methodological competence but also extensive experience with research in general and questioning techniques in particular. The questions should be clear, easy to read, and attractive to the respondents. The questions have to be listed in a logical order, allowing for transition and flow and avoiding distortion and problems. The questionnaire format is chosen to suit the nature of the survey, the types of respondents, length of the questionnaire, nature of the administering the questionnaire, and the findings of a pilot study. The size of the questionnaire depends on the factors such as research objective, the type of the respondents, the methods of the analysis, and availability of resources. One should include as many questions as necessary and as few as possible. Questions contained is a question contained in a questionnaire vary with respect to a number of criteria, especially those relating to their relevance to the research topic, their approach and structure, content and wording, and with regard to the type of the response they require. The questions can be classified as primary question, secondary question, tertiary question, padding questions, probing questions, direct and indirect questions, suggestive question, filter questions, and contingency questions, fixed, alternative, and open ended questions. Open ended questions have many advantages and several limitations. Pre coded questions have the advantages of the being easy to administer, to code, and to answer. They also have several limitations, particularly restricting the freedom of the respondents. The content of the question is obviously the most important elements of the constructions of the questionnaire. The researchers have to consider the following points while preparing the questionnaire. Every question must be relevant to one or more aspect of the study. Ambiguous, non-specific, and hypothetical questions are to be avoided. Leading, double-barreled, and presuming questions should not be employed. Embracing personal and threatening questions should be avoided. Vague words and academic jargon. Vague words and academic jargon, jargon, should not be used. The language of the respondent should be employed. Easy flow and logical progression in the questionnaire should be assured. Each question should ask what it is supposed to ask. The success of the questionnaire in general and the response rate in particular depend to a large extent on the following factors. The questionnaire must have a professional appearance and should give the impression of a document that deserves respect and invokes feelings of the responsibility. The questionnaire should be presented in a way that encourages the respondents to complete and return it. Print and color of paper and ink must correspond with the preferences of the respondents. The questionnaire should be presented as a complete document with an inviting and reassuring introductory cover letter and a concluding note containing instructions regarding the return of the questionnaire. Sufficient instructions and prompts should be provided where necessary. Pre-coded questions should offer adequate response categories. All questions should be checked for possible bias and ethical adequacy. Questionnaires are conducted in a very sophisticated and systematic manner. The process of the construction goes through a number of the interrelated steps such as preparation, constructing the first draft, self-critique regarding relevance, symmetry, clarity, simplicity and other things, external scrutiny, re-examination and revision, pre-test or pilot study, revision, second pre-test and formulation of the final draft. Questionnaire construction is not only employed in the era of mail questionnaires, it is also employed by researchers using interviews. Here, the communication between the researchers and the respondents is closer and more intense than it is in the mail questionnaire. Activity. How do you think an interview schedule is different from the questionnaire? How do you think an interview schedule is different from a questionnaire? Tell us about these differences and what, according to you, is the better among the two in terms of the collecting data. 1.6 Rapid Appraisal Techniques Focus Group Discussion FGD. This method was introduced by Kurt Levin, Kurt Levin Levin in 1936 in the USA, United States of America, in the context of small group experiments and later in other areas of research including market research and opinion research in the USA and other countries. The respondents are brought together in an artificial environment created for the purpose and are examined according to some methodological criteria. Focus groups can be subjected to treatment in a controlled way, converting them to a kind of quasi experimental method. Consequently, knowledge of experiments, their nature, strengths, and weaknesses can help us to use focus groups more constructively. Focus groups are employed extensively among many social researchers, with the range of social scientists using focus groups steadily increasing. They are used as a preliminary study leading to quantitative research, as a self contained and principal method of research, as a supplementary source, or as a part of a multi method study. In any case, focus group involve persons specially selected owing to their particular interest, expertise, or position in the community in an attempt to collect information on a number of issues as well as to brainstorm a variety of solutions and ultimately facilitate group discussion as a tool of data collection and possibly policy construction. Focus groups are used as a form of quantitative and qualitative data collection that employs discussion in a non-standardized form and observation as its sources. It is primarily a way of gaining information in short period of time about the breadth or variation of opinions and of establishing a mechanism of opinion formation. The basic assumption that underlies this method is that a group environment will, through mutual stimulation, encourage discussion related to topical issues, increase the motivation to address social issues, enable the discussion leader to lead the discussion towards focal points and topical issues through encouragement or discouragement or manipulation of the environment, and allow significant points of view to be presented in a real, emotional, and summated form as spontaneous expression, in other words, reducing the opportunity for a controlled presentation of personal views. This is expected to occur when addressing, describing, and explaining other issues introduced by the leader or a member of the group. Comparing different points of view, evaluating views, and discussing outcomes and judging relevant arguments, making discussion or drawing conclusions, presenting alternative points of view, trying to achieve or suggesting a possible consensus. The FGD, focus group discussion, can serve several purposes and thought following are thought by many researchers to be most significant. As a pre-research method, it can help to prepare the main study by providing sufficient information about the study project and object, about operationalization by defining indicators, and about preventing possible errors. As a post research method, it can explain trends and varieties and variations, reasons, and causes through the views of the respondents. As a main study, it offers information about group processes, spontaneous feelings, regions, and explanations of attitudes and behavior as adequately as any other method. Behavior as adequately as any other method. In one form, it can bring about changes in the group and its members as a result of the direction and intensity of the discussion. In other form, group discussion allows access to valuable information about the group processes, attitude changes and manipulation, attitudes and opinions of the group members, the group or the public, the effectiveness of the certain methods, and so on. There are four major steps in it: bring strange, orientation, adjustment, intimacy, conformity, and fading out the discussion. Choice of respondents. Choice of respondents is accomplished through a random procedure, systematic or cluster sampling, or other ways that can be justified by the object of the study, nature of the respondents, or the underlying methodology or the underlying methodology. Question of interest here may be related to the structure of the group, that is, whether it should consist of similar or different people, age and gender of the respondents, and so on. The size of the group must be large enough to provide a basis for the reasonable discussion but not too large to become uncontrollable. The group size should be between 5 to 12 but no longer than 20. A size around 10 seems to be ideal. The group composition depends on methodological factors. The group composition depends on methodological factors. The members of the group must be talkative, knowledgeable knowledgeable of and interested in the research topic. Introduction of goal directed discussion. After a group is selected for investigation, a goal directed discussion is introduced by the group leader. This is accomplished through the introduction of the discussion generated question supplied by the researcher. The group leader will intervene as required, directing the discussion to the researcher's goal and keeping its course interesting and balanced. The way in which discussion will be introduced, organized, and controlled is summarized in an interview guide which is given to the group leaders. Discussions are led on the basis of instruction. In physical terms, the environment in which the discussion will take place should be conducive to encouraging debate. Rooms must be arranged so that all respondents can see each other and communicate with all participants freely. Controlling the discussion. The discussion will be controlled by the leaders as required by the situation. Discussions that are slow to start will be helped to gain momentum through